Today, we're joined by Michael Bhagwandin. He is based out of New York City. He is an expert in all the different areas. We have a networking group together where we connect with agents across the country. So today we just want to kind of talk about the market in New York City. What are you seeing?
So the New York City housing market, specifically Manhattan, we've been pretty slow the last couple of years, I'd say. However, since post-election in Manhattan, things have picked up significantly. I mean, just in January alone, buyers that I was helping in 2023 and 2024 who put their search on hold, I've had about 6 different past clients reach out and ready to re-engage and make some decisions. So interestingly enough, we have a limited supply of inventory in Manhattan as well. We've got about 5,400 homes on the market. Probably a couple of years ago, we had about 8,000 homes on the market. You know, post-COVID, I think some people had their hair on fire. And we're like, we're going to sell New York and, buy this place in Miami. And then we're seeing a lot of people who are in Florida who are like, yeah, this was fun for a couple of years, but I'm ready to come back to New York City.
And also the work from home kind of they're phasing it out. It's a lot of return to office. So
exactly.
Are you seeing a lot of people coming back from out of state?
Yeah, so I sold some apartments for some of my clients who Pfizer was the company that said they're fully remote, 100%. And 2 years later had to be back in the office by October or would lose their job. So I've seen a lot of that.
First-time home buyers, they don't know. They're going to come to you and say, hey, we want to live in Manhattan. We've never lived in Manhattan before. We're very interested in moving and experience the city life. What neighborhoods would you recommend?
For that situation, I would tell them all the great nightclubs and bars. And I feel like a lot of people that are like new to the city, depending on their budget and price point, they want to be in Soho, Tribeca, the West Village, Greenwich Village, Chelsea. There's a lot of culture, there's great restaurants, there's the art galleries, the food scene, great shopping, anywhere downtown. The apartments are going to be a lot smaller than uptown. The West Village, they joke around, you live in a shoebox when you first move to New York City, but everybody wants to be in the West Village because it's supply and demand, right? They're tiny little shoeboxes. But the buildings there, most of them are townhouses that are just 3 or 4 stories. Whereas once you get to the Upper East and Upper West Side, you get these monstrosity buildings and there's a lot more supply and prices are a lot less money than it would be downtown. So for party goers or people who are earlier in their careers who are, especially like when I was new to New York, wanted to be downtown. I wanted to work hard and play hard. And then as they've evolved, I'm okay with like an Upper West Side, Upper East Side living because it's much more calm, bigger sidewalks. I live in Chelsea. I went into the building as a renter. And Friday and Saturday nights, there's a lot of happy yelling and screaming where people are just like drunk coming out of the bars and clubs. And it's like 3 a.m. and you hear that. Whereas like, not saying that it doesn't happen on the Upper East or the Upper West Side, but I'm sure it's a lot less. Another big factor is price point. Let's just say like Kips Bay, Murray Hill. I think those neighborhoods is where you get the best value for your money. If you're looking for new development, Hell's Kitchen, they've got some really great value.
Sounds like a deal is there.
Exactly. So I've had buyers buying in that neighborhood, specifically in Hell's Kitchen, because you get great value in a brand new luxury building. Full service, doorman, elevator, gym, rooftop, with amenities, pools.
Speaking of like these different buildings, in the city, they have tons of co-ops, and we have co-ops out here in Queens and in Long Island as well. Is there a difference between city co-ops and the ones over here?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. I think in most of the co-ops in Queens, you're allowed to put 10% down payment, and some may ask for 20%. That doesn't exist in Manhattan. 20% is the absolute minimum for co-ops in Manhattan. And there are co-ops, let's just say around like Sutton Place or on Central Park, where they require 60 or 75% down payment. Some co-ops require no financing. You have to buy the apartments cash.
Wow.
And that's how they, co-ops decide who gets to live in their buildings. I also think in Queens, you can buy a co-op and then rent it out.
Some of them.
Some of them and have it as investment. And that does exist in New York City. But mostly the rule of thumb in co-ops is you'd be allowed to rent 1, maybe 2 years out of your entire time of ownership. So it's much, much more strict.
And is there also like reserves? Like I've heard that some co-ops require a pretty big cash reserve.
Yeah, so most co-ops are looking for 20% down payment and then 2 years of mortgage and maintenance payments liquid post-closing. And there are co-ops that want to see at least a couple $1 million in your bank account post-closing liquid, right? Those are the higher end co-ops on Central Park and those sort of places. So let's just say, for example, your mortgage and maintenance are $6,000 a month for a 1-bedroom. They're going to want to see $72,000 by 2 years. So you're looking at like $150,000 post-closing liquidity minimum on top of the 20% down payment. And that's pretty standard in most buildings.
So sometimes the co-ops are more strict than the banks.
Well, they certainly are. Co-ops are definitely more strict than the banks.
And that kills a lot of deals for people.
So this is something I share with buyers because co-ops do get a bad rap. But in 2008, when we had the financial crisis and the housing market in America collapsed, and Miami, let's just say, for example, $1 million apartment in a building all of a sudden became worth $300,000. That didn't happen in New York City. And New York City, 75% of ownership is co-ops, right? And those strict co-ops preserve the New York City housing market. When banks were giving down 0 down mortgages, co-ops were like, absolutely not. You will put down a minimum 20%. You will have 2 years of mortgage and maintenance required, and your debt to income ratio will be no more than 26%. And because of that, when the market crashed around the country, New York City took a little dip and we went right back up, and we continue to be a safe haven for investments.
That's a great little nugget.
Yeah. And even during COVID, people wanted to have fire sales in co-ops, and like they thought New York City was over. The media said New York City was over, and owners just wanted to like put a fire sale and sell their properties, and co-ops were like, no, absolutely not. And sure enough, in 2021, the market surged, right? Like we came out of COVID and we got a vaccine, and it was business as usual. So
isn't that funny where like every year you see that New York is over, that there's always a surge of people leaving New York City or New York in general, and then the values are not reflecting that at all. I'm waiting for that to happen.
Well, they said New York City was over after 9/11, right? And I mean, the city, it just kept going up and up and up. So I think it gets media, like great clickbaits. People are more interested in clicking when it's like doom. They're like, New York City's over, but it's just not true. There's a lot of people who love New York City, and as people left, which they did post-COVID, I think there was a changing of the guards, right? A lot of people who had been in New York for 20, 30, 40 years, they just felt it was time to move on. And as they left, there was a whole new flock of people coming in, beginning their careers and starting new lives in New York City. And I've helped a lot of people who started their lives in New York City who, let's say, moved to Connecticut. I helped a guy, he's in his 70s, and he wanted his he wanted to live his best life. And I was here for it. I love seeing that.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the city, one of the most important things is food for me. So which area has the best food?
I think the city has great food all over. I mean, I love the East Village. So I'm half Indian, so I love curry. So they call Murray Hill Curry Hill. I think there's incredible Indian restaurants there. You can go to Koreatown, you can go to Chinatown. I mean, I don't think there's any one specific neighborhood that has the best food. I think there's amazing food all over the city, including Queens. Like Jackson Heights is like an amazing food, right? And Brooklyn, some of the best restaurants in the city popping up with Michelin stars are now all over Brooklyn. So I think the city as a whole has incredible diversity, which allows us for incredible food all over.
That's the stuff that I love to see about New York City, where sometimes if the restaurant is good enough, you can just put it on like a warehouse block, just a solo restaurant, and people will come to you if the food is good enough. And that's
Exactly.
I love those kind of restaurants.
Yeah, for sure. And I love the little hole in the wall places that are just like phenomenal food. It's really nice to go out for like this past weekend. I went to Craft, Tom Colicchio, which was a great restaurant, great atmosphere. The food I thought was okay. I wasn't blown away by anything, right? And then sometimes you go to these other little hole in the wall places in New York City. Actually, there was a food truck, and I think they were Peruvian, and I had the best food. I mean, it was amazing. I just never seen them back again.
Isn't that like incredible where you can have this great experience and then it's gone with the food truck? Like,
yeah.
Where did you go?
I told friends about it, but I haven't seen the truck come back. Maybe because it's winter. Maybe they'll come back, spring, summer, fall.
Awesome. All right. I think that's all I have for you. I mean, I think you've given us so many gems and a lot of information on the city. So thank you so much for your time.
Excellent. Good to see you, Paul.
All right. See ya.